The emergency klaxons hadn't stopped screaming for 3 hours. High Chancellor Vextai slammed 4 of his tentacles against the council chamber's central podium, his bioluminescent patches flashing desperate orange. "Order! Order!" His translator crackled with static as delegates from 47 different species shouted, clicked, and howled simultaneously. "The karate delegation will be heard." A crystalline being's voice cut through the chaos like breaking glass. "The Karathi delegation fled their homeworld 6 hours ago," Vextai snapped back, "along with the Zephyrians, the Moltecs, and apparently everyone with half a brain." Commander Raisha of the Altair Defense Corps stepped forward, her normally pristine uniform torn and stained with something that definitely wasn't supposed to be purple. "High Chancellor, with respect, you need to see the reports. All of them. I've seen enough reports today to last 3 lifetimes," Vextai muttered, but his voice carried across the chamber's audio feed. "The Zerathi hive has been silent for 7 days. The Gorthak Pride went dark 4 days ago. The Void Hunters stopped responding to any communication 48 hours ago. And now, you're telling me they're all dead?" Raissa's voice was flat, emotionless. "Every single apex predator species in the Outer Rim, gone." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional nervous chittering from the insectoid delegates. "That's impossible," whispered Ambassador Khaldun, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "The Zerathi hive has been terrorizing trade routes for over 3,000 years. They've conquered 17 star systems. They eat starship hulls for breakfast." "Had," Raisha corrected. They had been terrorizing trade routes. Vextai's tentacles curled inward, a defensive gesture his species had evolved over millions of years. "You're telling this council that an entire star system's worth of apex predators just disappeared in 7 days?" "Not disappeared." Raisha activated her holoprojector. "Exterminated, systematically, efficiently, and according to our long-range sensors, by a single expedition force." The hologram flickered to life, showing tactical displays, energy signatures, and ship classifications. At the center of it all was a single designation that made half the council delegates start backing toward the exits. "Human? Oh, for the love of off." Chancellor Vextai's patches flashed angry red. "Not this again. Humans are a class species. They barely figured out faster than light travel 50 years ago. They use projectile weapons and chemical explosives. They're harmless." "But harmless," Rhea said quietly. Past tense. The chamber's main display activated, showing archived footage from the Galactic Species Database. A small, bipedal creature with forward-facing eyes and opposable thumbs smiled at the camera. The classification read, Homo sapiens, omnivore, non-aggressive. Technological level, primitive. Threat assessment, minimal. "These are the creatures you're claiming wiped out the Zerathi hive?" Ambassador Khaldun's voice cracked with what might have been laughter or hysteria. "I'm not claiming anything," Rayesh replied. "I'm reading the sensor data. 1 human expedition ship entered Zerathi space 7 days ago. Today, there are no life signs on any of the 17 worlds they controlled. None." The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, then terrifying. "Show us the footage," Vextai finally said. Raisha hesitated. "High Chancellor, I should warn you." "Show us the footage." The hologram shifted, displaying grainy surveillance feeds from a Zerathi breeding facility. The timestamp showed 6 days ago. Thousands of creatures filled the screen, each one the size of a small building, with claws that could tear through battle armor and acid that dissolved starship hulls. Then the humans arrived. They weren't wearing power suits or carrying energy weapons. They looked exactly like the harmless creatures in the species database, except for their eyes. Their eyes were different, focused, patient. "They're not fighting," whispered Ambassador Khaldun. "They're hunting." The humans moved through the facility like a coordinated pack. They used the Zerathi's own size against them, their aggression against them, their territorial instincts against them. What should have been a massacre became something else entirely. "How many humans are in that facility?" Vextai asked. 12, Raisha answered. "And how many Zerathi?" "Approximately 15,000. The footage continued. The humans didn't just kill the 030, they eliminated them with a methodical precision that made the Council's most hardened military advisors look away. No wasted movement, no unnecessary brutality, just efficient, relentless extermination. "They're not even using their technology," someone whispered from the back of the chamber. "They're using rocks and sticks, and is that one of them using a Zerathi claw as a weapon?" "That's not the disturbing part," Raisha said softly. The timestamp jumped forward. Same facility 24 hours later. The humans had set up what appeared to be a camp in the middle of the carnage. They were cooking food over a small fire, and they were laughing. "Switch it off," Vextai ordered. "High Chancellor, switch it off." The hologram died. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of several delegates quietly being sick. 7 days, Vextai said finally. They eliminated the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy in 7 days. "Actually," Raisa said, checking her datapad, "that was just the first day. The rest of the time they were thorough." But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was the message that had just appeared on every communication array in the galaxy, broadcast on all frequencies in every known language. "Hi there, this is Captain Johnson of the Earth Expedition Ship Persistence. We've completed our pest control survey of the Outer Rim territories and are happy to report that the local ecosystem has been successfully stabilized. We'll be moving on to the next sector soon. Have a great day." The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss, and every conversation died. Captain Johnson walked in like he was entering a coffee shop, not the most secure facility in the galaxy. He wore a simple blue jumpsuit with Earth Expedition Force patches, carried a worn leather satchel, and had the kind of easy smile that made predators across the galaxy instinctively flee. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the massive chamber. "Had to find parking. This place is huge." Half the remaining delegates were already edging toward the emergency exits. The Karathi ambassador had turned completely transparent, a stress response that usually preceded total system shutdown. Ambassador Colden was making small whimpering sounds while his 6 eyes tracked the humans' every movement. High Chancellor Vextai's bioluminescent patches cycled through 17 different colors before settling on a sickly yellow-green. "You? You? The human?" "Well, one of them, yeah." Johnson looked around the chamber with genuine curiosity. "This is really impressive architecture, very dramatic. I bet the acoustics are amazing. 12 species have evacuated their homeworlds." Vextai's voice cracked across 3 octaves. Johnson blinked. "Oh, that's a lot of moving. Are they okay? Do they need help with the relocation? We're pretty good at logistics." The silence that followed was the kind that made tinnitus seem loud. "You..." Ambassador Colden's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you serious right now?" "About the logistics, yeah, absolutely. Moving an entire species is complicated. You need proper supply chains, temporary housing, medical support for the transition. We helped the Centauri colonies relocate after that solar flare incident. Took about 6 months, but everyone— "The Exacre hive is extinct!" Vextai screamed. Johnson's expression shifted to something that might have been confusion. "Well, yeah. That was the whole point. They were causing problems." "Problems?" Commander Raicha stepped forward, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm before she remembered that weapons were completely useless against this thing. They were apex predators. They controlled 17 star systems. They were a major galactic power. "They were invasive," Johnson said, simply. "Look, I get that you guys had some kind of arrangement with them, but they were disrupting the local ecosystem, eating trading vessels, terrorizing peaceful species, turning entire planets into breeding grounds. That's textbook invasive species behavior." "They weren't invasive," Raisa said slowly. "They were indigenous to those systems. They evolved there." Johnson pulled out a small tablet and scrolled through what appeared to be field notes. "Actually, according to our ecological survey, they expanded into those systems about 3,000 years ago and systematically eliminated the native species. Classic invasive pattern, really threw off the natural balance." "Natural balance?" Vextai's tentacles were now tied in knots. They were sentient beings. So were the 17 species they drove to extinction, Johnson replied, still scrolling through his notes, plus the 43 species they were currently in the process of eliminating. The biodiversity loss was pretty severe. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of beings trying to process information that didn't fit into any category their brains had evolved to handle. You called this an emergency session, Johnson continued, looking genuinely concerned. Are there other invasive species you need help with? Because we did a preliminary survey of the surrounding sectors, and there are some real problem cases out there. Other invasive species? Colden's voice was getting higher with each word. The Gorthak Pride, for instance. They've been strip mining inhabited worlds for their entire expansion period. And, don't get me started on the Void Hunters, they literally consume the life force of entire ecosystems. We've got teams ready to deploy if you've already deployed, Vextai shrieked. Johnson checked his tablet again. Oh, right. Yeah, we took care of those too. Sorry, should have mentioned that earlier. Time zones, you know. It's been a busy week. The security chief activated the chamber's main display without being asked. The tactical readouts showed the same impossible data from before, but now they were updated in real time. The Gorthak Pride controlled 41 systems, Reashir said, her voice completely flat. They had a fleet of over 10,000 warships. They were one of the most militarized species in the galaxy. Where? Johnson nodded. Past tense. They put up more of a fight than the Zerathi, I'll give them that. But once we figured out their command structure, it was pretty straightforward. Take out the Alpha, the rest get confused and aggressive, then they make tactical errors. You're talking about genocide, whispered Ambassador Colden. I'm talking about pest control, Johnson corrected. There's a difference. We only eliminate species that prey on others. The Gorthak Pride had enslaved over 60 different species. The Void Hunters were literally eating star systems. These weren't... would you call a locust swarm genocide if you stopped it from destroying farmland? The main display shifted to show archived footage from the Gorthak elimination. The timestamp showed 3 days ago. The humans didn't attack the Gorthak fleet directly. They waited, watched, learned the patrol patterns, the communication protocols, the chain of command. Then they struck with surgical precision. Not at the ships, but at the Gorthak themselves. The footage showed humans moving through Gorthak command vessels like they belonged there, eliminating targets with the same methodical efficiency they'd shown against the Zerath. But the most disturbing part wasn't the killing. It was the humans' faces during the hunt. They weren't angry or afraid or even particularly focused. They looked like they were having fun. The persistence hunting, Raisa said quietly. That's what you call it. Among other things, Johnson agreed. Humans are endurance predators. We don't give up, ever. Once we decide something needs to be handled, we handle it. What happened next made galactic history, and not in a good way. Dr. Yilnara burst through the chamber doors, her usually pristine lab coat stained with what appeared to be several different bodily fluids. Hi, Chancellor, we have a massive problem. We know, Vextai said wearily. The humans know. You don't understand. Dr. Yelnara's voice carried the particular hysteria that came from realizing you'd made a career-ending mistake. I've been running biological analyses on the human specimen data for the past 6 hours. Everything we thought we knew about their species is wrong. Captain Johnson looked up from his tablet with polite interest. Oh, the classification issue. Yeah, we noticed that in your database. Pretty funny, actually. Funny? Dr. Yilnara's voice cracked. Funny? We classified you as harmless omnivores. Well, we are omnivores, Johnson said reasonably. We eat both plants and meat. That part's accurate. You're not omnivores. Dr. Yilnara pulled out her own tablet, hands shaking as she scrolled through data. You're hypercarnivorous persistence predators with pack bonding, behavioral patterns, and an abnormal capacity for tactical cooperation. Your forward-facing eyes, your endurance physiology, your social structure. You're basically the galaxy's most efficient killing machines. That seems a little harsh, Johnson said. We're also pretty good at agriculture. Your agriculture evolved from hunting strategies, Dr. Yilnara shrieked. You domesticated other species. You turned prey animals into willing participants in their own consumption. That's not normal omnivore behavior. Commander Raishir stepped forward, her face pale. Doctor, please, tell me you're exaggerating. I wish I was. Dr. Yilnara activated her holographic display showing comparative biological analyses. Look at the data. Humans don't just hunt, they're designed to hunt. Their skeletal structure is optimized for endurance running, their sweat glands allow them to regulate temperature during extended physical activity, their hand-eye coordination is off the charts, and their pack bonding. The display shifted to show human social structures and communication patterns. They don't just cooperate, Dr. Yulnara continued. They form emotional attachments that override individual survival instincts. They'll die for each other, they'll kill for each other, and they can maintain coordinated hunting behavior across distances that would break most species' communication networks. So what you're telling us, Ambassador Khaldun said slowly, is that we accidentally invited apex predators into the galactic community and then gave them maps to every inhabited system. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Captain Johnson cleared his throat. If I could interrupt, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not actually predators. Every being in the chamber turned to stare at him. We're ecological management specialists, he continued. There's a difference. Predators hunt for food or territory. We hunt for balance. You eliminated 3 entire species in 1 week, Vextai said flatly. 3 invasive species that were disrupting galactic biodiversity, Johnson corrected. And honestly, that was just the preliminary survey. We've identified 17 other problem species that need immediate attention. The chamber went completely silent. Even the life support systems seemed to hold their breath. 17? Raisha whispered. Well, 17 major ones, Johnson said, consulting his tablet. There are about 43 minor cases, but those can probably wait until next quarter. We don't want to overwhelm the ecosystem with too many changes at once. You want to eliminate 60 species? Vextai said, his voice completely emotionless. The ones that are causing problems, yes. The hegemony of Claw, for instance. They've been systematically exterminating peaceful species for resources. The Devourers have been consuming entire star systems. The subjugation fleet has enslaved over 100 different species. These aren't... Look, would you let a cancer spread just because it was technically alive? Dr. Yulnara was frantically updating her biological analysis. High Chancellor, I'm reading hormone levels, stress indicators, neural activity patterns. The human isn't lying. He genuinely believes he's helping. That's the scariest part. Actually, Johnson said, brightening, since this is an emergency session, maybe we could get official approval for the expanded ecological management program? It would really help with the paperwork. Paperwork? Ambassador Khaldun's voice was barely audible. Oh, yeah, tons of paperwork. Species elimination requests, ecological impact assessments, biodiversity restoration plans. The bureaucracy is actually more challenging than the actual pest control. You're asking us to officially approve genocide, Vextai said. I'm asking you to officially approve ecological restoration, Johnson corrected. The species we're targeting are all destructive invasives. Remove them and the galaxy's biodiversity will flourish. It's basic conservation biology. And if we say no? Raisha asked. Johnson looked genuinely puzzled. Why would you say no? This is good for everyone. But if we did say no? Oh. Johnson thought about it for a moment. Well, I guess we'd have to file an environmental emergency override. Can't let invasive species destroy the ecosystem just because of political complications. The implications of that statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. You're going to do it anyway, Vextai said. We're going to do our job anyway, Johnson agreed. But it would be nice to have official backing. Ambassador Khaldun was already activating his emergency communicator. All Karathi vessels, this is Code Black evacuation. Abandon all territorial claims. Repeat, abandon all territorial claims and retreat to deep space. The Altair Defense Corps is issuing similar orders, Rayaj said, her voice hollow. Full retreat from all border systems. Why is everyone leaving? Johnson asked, looking around the rapidly emptying chamber. Are we having the meeting somewhere else? The Zephyr delegation was already gone. The Moltec ambassador had fainted. 3 more species were broadcasting emergency evacuation orders to their fleets. You don't understand, Dr. Yilnara said, her voice filled with horrified fascination. You've just become the apex predator of the entire galaxy, and you think you're gardening, but that revelation paled in comparison to what came next. 6 months later, the Galactic Council reconvened in what used to be called an emergency session, but was now simply referred to as Tuesday. High Chancellor Vex Tai looked older, much older. His bioluminescent patches had settled into a permanent dim blue that indicated chronic stress, and his tentacles had developed a slight tremor that no amount of medication could cure. Trade route attacks are down 97%, he announced to the half-empty chamber. Piracy incidents have decreased by 94%. Slavery operations have been reduced by... He paused, checking his notes. 100%. Because they're all dead? Muttered Ambassador Colden from his seat in the back. He'd returned from deep space exile 3 weeks ago, along with most of the other species that had fled. Every single aggressive species in the galaxy is either extinct or has suddenly discovered pacifism. The Ravagers submitted a formal application for peace treaty negotiations, Commander Reisha reported. They also included a comprehensive plan for ecological restoration of the 17 worlds they strip-mined. The subjugation fleet released all their slaves and disbanded, added Dr. Yilnara. They've established a charitable foundation for species rehabilitation. The hegemony of Claw has become the collective of compassion, Vextai continued reading from his status report. They're now specializing in interspecies conflict resolution and have requested to join the Council as a non-voting observer. It's like the entire galaxy suddenly remembered how to be civilized, Reisha said quietly. Or got reminded, Colden corrected. The chamber doors opened and Captain Johnson walked in with his usual easy smile. 6 months of being the most feared being in the galaxy hadn't changed his appearance at all, except for a slight tan and a new galactic ecological management patch on his jumpsuit. Morning, everyone, he said cheerfully. Hope you don't mind, but we're running a little behind schedule. Had to deal with some Void remnants who were trying to rebuild their operation in the outer reaches. Void remnants? Dr. Yilnara asked, her voice carefully neutral. Oh, just some holdouts from the original Void Hunter elimination, Johnson said, settling into what had become his regular chair. Nothing major, they surrendered after we explained the situation. You mean after you demonstrated what happened to the last group that didn't surrender? Khaldun said. We prefer positive reinforcement, Johnson replied. But yes, historical examples can be quite educational. Vextai cleared his throat. Captain Johnson, the Council has been discussing the results of your ecological management program. Great results, right? Johnson's face lit up. Biodiversity is up across all sectors. Trade is flourishing. The peaceful species are expanding their populations for the first time in millennia. It's exactly what we hoped for. The thing is, Raisa said carefully, some of our member species are concerned about the methodology. The methodology works, Johnson said simply. Look at the data. Galactic violence is at historic lows. Species extinction rates have plummeted. Ecosystem restoration is ahead of schedule. What's the concern? The concern, Vextai said, his voice strained, is that you've essentially become the galaxy's enforcer. We prefer ecological management specialists, Johnson corrected. But if that's what you want to call us, fine. Someone has to maintain the balance by eliminating anyone who threatens it, Khaldun said. By eliminating anyone who preys on others, Johnson corrected. There's a difference. We don't hunt peaceful species, we protect them, whether they want protection or not, Raisha observed. Johnson looked genuinely puzzled. Why wouldn't they want protection? The Centauri colonies are thriving now that the Ravagers aren't strip-mining their systems. The Gentle Ones can finally expand beyond their homeworld without fear of being enslaved. The Harmonious Collective is exploring artistic expression for the first time in centuries. Everyone's better off. Everyone who's still alive, Colden muttered. Everyone who deserves to be alive, Johnson said, and for the first time in 6 months his tone carried an edge. The species we eliminated were predators. They killed for sport, enslaved for profit, destroyed for resources. They weren't civilized. They were parasites. And who decides what counts as civilization? Vextai asked. The ecosystem decides, Johnson replied. Species that contribute to galactic biodiversity and peaceful coexistence are civilized. Species that prey on others aren't. It's not complicated. So you're the judge, jury, and executioner for the entire galaxy, Razor said. We're the immune system, Johnson corrected. And apparently the galaxy needed one. The chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, they could see ships from dozens of species conducting peaceful trade, scientific research, and cultural exchange. The sight should have been inspiring. Instead, it felt like a zoo. The irony, Dr. Yilnara said quietly, is that you've created exactly what the Council was supposed to be. A peaceful, cooperative galactic civilization. You're welcome, Johnson said, by becoming the very thing we were trying to prevent, she continued. A single species with absolute power over all others. We're not ruling anyone, Johnson protested. We're just maintaining standards. What happens if we disappoint you? Vixtai asked. What happens if the Council makes a decision you don't like? Johnson considered this for a moment. Has the Council ever made a decision that resulted in the suffering of peaceful species? Not recently, Vextai admitted. Then you probably don't have anything to worry about. The silence that followed was the kind that made everyone acutely aware of their own heartbeat. The galaxy has never been more peaceful, Johnson said finally. Never been more prosperous, never been safer for the species that just want to live their lives without being hunted, enslaved, or consumed. We've eliminated the predators, and the prey is thriving. And what are we now? Coldoon asked quietly. Johnson smiled his easy, friendly smile. You're protected. The words hung in the air like a benediction and a threat, and everyone in the chamber understood that they meant exactly the same thing. Protected, Ambassador Coldoon repeated slowly. Like pets, like partners, Johnson corrected, but his smile had acquired a quality that made several delegates unconsciously lean away from him. The galaxy is a community now. Everyone has a role to play. And what's our role? Vextai asked. You govern the peaceful species. You facilitate trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. You do what you've always done, just better, more efficiently, without the constant threat of predation. Under your supervision, Riesha observed. Under our protection, Johnson said. There's a difference. Dr. Yilnara activated her tablet, scrolling through recent data. Captain, our monitoring stations have detected human vessels in every inhabited system. Care to explain? Ecological survey teams, Johnson said promptly. We're conducting comprehensive biodiversity assessments, making sure the ecosystem remains stable. You're watching us, Colden said flatly. We're monitoring ecosystem health, Johnson corrected. And yes, that includes social stability indicators. Species that prey on others don't usually announce their intentions with formal declarations. We've learned to watch for the warning signs. What warning signs? Vextai asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Johnson consulted his tablet. Increased military production without corresponding external threats. Expansion into territory belonging to peaceful species. Resource acquisition patterns that suggest exploitation rather than cooperation. Changes in communication patterns that indicate coordination for aggressive action. You're monitoring our communications? Riesha's voice was very quiet. We're monitoring ecosystem disruption indicators, Johnson said. Communication changes are just one data point among many. This is surveillance, Dr. Yilnara said. You're surveilling the entire galaxy. Be maintaining ecological balance, Johnson replied. If you're not planning to prey on other species, you have nothing to hide. The chamber fell silent again. But this time it was the silence of beings who were beginning to understand the full scope of their situation. The Karathi rebellion, Colden said suddenly. 3 weeks ago, The separatist movement that wanted to break away from the council and establish independent colonies. What about it? Johnson asked. They just gave up. Overnight. Disbanded the entire movement and formally apologized to the council. Sometimes people come to their senses, Johnson said pleasantly. What did you do to them? Vextai demanded. We had a conversation, Johnson said. Very productive. They realized that breaking away from the council might destabilize the local ecosystem. Independent colonies sometimes develop problematic behaviors when they're not part of a larger cooperative structure. You threatened them, Raisha said. We educated them, Johnson corrected. We showed them what happened to the last species that decided they were above galactic cooperation. Very educational. The sovereign princes, Dr. Yilnara whispered. They tried to establish an independent empire last month. They just vanished. They relocated, Johnson said, to a nice uninhabited system where they can practice sovereignty without disrupting anyone else's ecosystem. Are they alive? Vextai asked. Define alive, Johnson said, and for the first time his smile didn't reach his eyes. The implications of that statement settled over the chamber like a physical weight. You're not protecting us, Khaldun said, his voice hollow. You're managing us. We're ensuring that the galaxy remains a place where peaceful species can thrive, Johnson said. If you want to call that management, fine, but the results speak for themselves. And what happens when you decide we're not thriving efficiently enough? Raisha asked. That's not going to happen, Johnson said confidently. You're all doing great. Trade is up, conflict is down, species are cooperating. The system is working exactly as designed. Designed by whom? Vextai asked. By natural selection, Johnson replied. The aggressive species are gone. The cooperative species remain. The ecosystem has found its balance. With humans at the top, Dr. Yilnara observed. With humans maintaining the balance, Johnson corrected. Someone has to be the apex predator. Better us than something that actually preys on the peaceful species. But you do prey on species, Khaldun said. You've eliminated dozens of them. We eliminate predators, Johnson said. There's a difference between predation and pest control. To you, Raisha said quietly. To us it looks exactly the same. Johnson considered this for a moment. I suppose from your perspective it might. But consider the alternative. Before we began the ecological management program, how many peaceful species were under constant threat? How many lived in fear? How many were enslaved, hunted, or consumed? Many, Vextai admitted reluctantly. And now, none, Raisha said. Exactly, Johnson said. We've created a galaxy where peaceful species can live without fear, where cooperation is rewarded and aggression is discouraged, where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. By becoming the strongest, Khaldun said. By accepting responsibility, Johnson corrected. The galaxy needed an immune system. We became it. The galaxy had never been safer. The galaxy had never been more terrified. And somewhere in the space between those two truths, humanity had found its purpose among the stars. They weren't conquerors. They weren't explorers. They weren't even really predators. They were gardeners. And the galaxy was their garden, whether it wanted to be or not.